Welcome to EPG Patashala. I am Dr. T. Sai Chandramoli, former Associate Professor of English, Railway College, Usmania University, Hyderabad. In Module 11, let's discuss the poems of Dante, Gabriel Rossetti, and Christina Rossetti. We'll be analyzing the poems of Dante Gabriel Rossetti titled My Sister's Sleep and The Blessed Damozel. We will also study three poems of Christina Rossetti titled An Apple Gathering, Dead Before Death, and Birthday. They belong to a movement in England known as Pre-Raphaelite brotherhood. This consisted of a group of painters who advocated art before Raphael made his presence felt through his revolutionary painting. In poetry, it involves the poets who had some connections with these artists and whose works show some of the characteristics of Pre-Raphaelite art. Essentially, there is a bonding, there is a connection between painting of the period and the poetry chosen by these poets, the genre of poetry, type of poetry chosen by these poets to write. The Pre-Raphaelite brotherhood consisted of William Holman Hunt, born in 1827, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, born in 1828, John Everett Millais, born in 1829, William Michael Rossetti, born in 1829. Notable other members of the group are James Collinson, Thomas Wooner, Frederick George Stevens. These people propagated their thoughts in the book titled The Germ, first published in the year 1850. The Pre-Raphaelites believed Raphael had made technologically perfect religious pictures which lacked in spiritual sense. They objected to the style and colors used in the paintings. For this, they felt that art and painters before Raphael were far superior and better. Characteristics of their paintings may be mentioned as beauty and simplicity of the medieval world. They did, in fact, eulogized medieval themes and simplicity of the medieval world in their works. Detailed and photographic representation of every object and natural elements using numbers, sounds, etc. They also used bright, vibrant colors that could convey a symbolic meaning. Pre-Raphaelite poetry consists of the compositions of the poems belonging to or contributed by Pre-Raphaelite brotherhood group. Many of these Pre-Raphaelite paintings use the works of Dante, Shakespeare, Keats, and Tennyson as the subject of their poetry. We can say that impressionistic exaggeration, fusion of realism with iconography, close correspondence between poetry and painting marked the work of this group. Their poetry also is known for the use of beautiful sensory details which are aimed at captivating the attention of the reader. Symbolic meaning linked with common objects or situations too elevated the appeal of their poetry. Archaicizing and medievalizing religious themes was their major and a basic motto. Use of melodious language and recurrence of mood like a death mark their poetry. Some symbols used in Pre-Raphaelite poetry are: lily stood for Mary's purity. The vine represented Christian truth and sacrifice of Christ's life. The rose represented beauty and virginity, while the dove stood for or represented Holy Spirit. Red cloak obviously has a reference to robe of Christ. A lamp represented piety, while lattice is used as a symbol of the cross. In their books represent three cardinals and theological virtues. The Pre-Raphaelite brotherhood consists of three poets or three members we have already discussed. They are William Holman Hunt, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, John Everett Millais. William Michael Rossetti and other members were James Collinson, Thomas Wooner, Frederick George Stevens, we talked about already. Among them, let's look at the life and works of Dante Gabriel Rossetti. He was associated with the Pre-Raphaelite brotherhood, which was formed in the year 1848. His main model was Elizabeth Sittel, whom he chose to be his model in the year 1849. In 1856, Fanny Conforth became his main model. He constantly changed the women to be his models. Perhaps he was not satisfied with the kind of inspiration he got, or he was not satisfied with the kind of work he turned out. However, he married Elizabeth Siddal in the year 1860. Unfortunately, she died a couple of years later. That's 1862. In the year 1863, Fanny Conforth shifted away from his life. She no longer worked for him as a model. In 1865, Jane Morris became his main model, and Dante Gabriel Rossetti passed away in the year 1882. His poetry is marked by sincerity of expression, beauty, thought, emotion, purity, pictorial quality, and of course, tragic power, overwhelming everyone, everything. There was romance, there was medievalism being mentioned, and he laid stress on spiritual side of life too. Medieval people and Dante Gabriel Rossetti believed in art for art's sake concept and tried to derive experience through senses. His metrical skill and clarity of expression and eagerness to learn languages may be mentioned as amazing, admirable, astounding. Complex interlinking of thought and feeling made his works alluring, attractive, captivating. Among all the works of Gabriel Dante Rossetti, The Blessed Damozel is a glittering example of a wonderful poem that could be written by a member of his group. Not only that, the poem carries a immortal appeal and everlasting charm. Christina Rossetti was born in December 1830. She was in love with Charles Kelly but did not marry him. She was engaged to James Collison but broke off with him too. She followed the evangelical faith but by 1840s changed to Tractarianism faith. After 1875, she joined the Society for Promoting Christian Faith. She was in fact quite inactive in the last 12 years of her life, and she departed of cancer on December 29th in the year 1874. Christina Rossetti was never fully part of Pre-Raphaelite brotherhood. Goblin Market and other poems of her were published in the year 1862. The Princess Progress and other poems was published in the year 1866. A careful observer or a casual reader can find in her poetry Gothic elements, talks of thwarted love and tension between desire and rejection. Her poems also abound in concealment, a sort of reservation, and then two worlds, the physical and the transcendental, troubling her and mankind all the time. Influence of religion and Pre-Raphaelite aesthetic values are conspicuous, prominent, and dominant in her poetry. We can also find some of the themes recurring in most of her works, like medieval legends of Arthur and romantic love, death, solitude, individuality, women, everyday scenes. Now, let's take a look at William Holman Hunt's The Lady of Shalott, a beautiful painting. Now, you may have a glimpse of Dante Gabriel Rossetti's painting, Mariana. Talking about the poems, one may say 95% of the poems were about feminine beauty. They are allegorical, musical, literary, historical, and carry religious representations. Like all people, they were also inspired by stories, other poets, and images that inspire in general. Their own relationships colored their works unobtrusively, at times dominantly. They fused the real and fictional worlds in their works. To appreciate the contribution of this group, it may not be out of place to mention or recite certain lines from the poems written by them. It is worthwhile to remember and recite certain lines from the poems of Pre-Raphaelite poets. To start with, we may quote Christina Rossetti from her poem Song. I quote, "When I am dead, my dearest, sing no sad songs for me." Full stop, unquote. Elizabeth Siddal, who was the main model and inspired Dante Gabriel Rossetti, in one of her poems titled Love and Hate, states, I quote, "All changes pass me like a dream. I neither sing nor pray, and thou art like the poisonous tree that stole my life away," unquote. Then one is reminded of Gertrude's description of Ophelia's death in Hamlet. It may be relevant to quote, but the passage is too lengthy to quote here. John Ruskin may be remembered for his opinion on art because the pre-Raphaelite poets also were concerned with art and painting basically. According to John Ruskin, all great art is the work of the whole living creature, body and soul, and chiefly of the soul. We find further John Ruskin stating, I quote, art is not a study of positive reality, it is a seeking for ideal truth, full stop, unquote. William Morrison states, I quote, history has remembered kings and warriors because they destroyed. Art has remembered the people because they created, unquote. Dante Gabriel Rossetti once stated, I quote, look in my face, my name is might have been, I am also called no more, too late, farewell, full stop, unquote. To sum up, we may say that pre-Raphaelist poets were chiefly concerned with the poetry, art or painting of medieval times. They valued medieval ethics and value system. They respected them more than anything else. They believed that Raphael, with his realistic painting and posturing, has done greater damage than bringing glory to the art and the world of artists. Pre-Raphaelists have been accused of creating or writing fleshy poems or fleshy poetry. Except one or two poems, no other poem or none of their poems is sensual, obscene, or deals with the anatomy of human beings. This is a sort of remark made by people intolerant of the preeminence and emergence of this particular group called Pre-Raphaelite brotherhood. In conclusion, we may say that Dante, Gabriel Rossetti and Christina Rossetti wrote poems with themes dear to the members of the group known as Pre-Raphaelite brotherhood. Their beliefs, their convictions, their aims were well reflected both in their poems and in their art. Their poetry itself is like a beautiful piece of art. Thank you. Thanks for visiting EPG Pathshala.